Casual magic is about how we can find beauty in the mundane every day. We all look forward to the 1% of days that are extraordinary, like the birthday, the wedding day, the job promotion. But 99% of our lives, of our days, are actually just ordinary. And wouldn't it be sad to only feel joy 1% of the time? Casual magic is all about finding the little joys in every day that are casually magic and almost training you to redefine how you find joy. Hi, hello, my name is Jade and welcome to episode 3 of Finding Your Casual Magic. Today, we're talking about the grand topic that is the stress and pressure of being in your 20s. The pressure to be and do everything all the time, all at once. To go and see the world and travel and enjoy, but also to build financial stability and save up for buying a house and to climb the career ladder and to find the love of your life and maybe prepare for marriage. Like, this is a hectic time to be alive, being in your 20s. And I'm 24 and I have a lot of thoughts about this topic. So I really hope you enjoy. If you're in your 20s, I hope this eases your stress or makes you feel seen. Enjoy. I really want to invite you to try and be here with intentionality, to try and be present in this space with me for the next 40 minutes or so. I dare you not to scroll. I dare you to put on Do Not Disturb. Like, I always find that I get so much more out of long form content, so whether that be videos or podcasts or TV shows, when I'm fully present with it. So I know it's hard, but really try and be here and hopefully you'll get more out of it. And if you've been here before, then you would know that I really love to start every episode by just taking a moment in the hectic whirlwind of our lives to just sit and be for 60 seconds-ish, to just sit and breathe. And no matter where you are, whether you're on your lunch break at work, whether you're traveling home from university, whether you're cleaning the house, try and take this 60 seconds or so to just sit and breathe. And I just love this vision of all of us all around the world taking that time to be together wherever we are. So I hope you come away from this feeling lighter, a little bit more clarity, and ready to dive into the scary topic of being in our 20s. Let's do it. Let's meditate. Take a second to notice where you are in space. Are you in a room? If so, how big is the room? Are you outside? What can you see? And if you feel comfortable to do so, gently close your eyes. Start to become aware of your breathing. Notice where you feel the breath in your body, maybe noticing the rise of your chest and belly at the inhale and fall on the exhale. Imagine yourself rooting down into the ground, feeling grounded and aware. And maybe notice if you're carrying tension anywhere in your body. If you can, try to allow that tension to release as you exhale. You can imagine all the tension just flowing away. We're going to do a final 4, 6, 8 breath where you'll take a deep inhale for 4, hold it for 6, and then exhale for 8. So when you're ready, deep inhale for 1, 2, 3, 4, and hold at the top for 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And big exhale, clearing exhale for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And when you feel ready to do so, gently open your eyes again. Welcome to the episode. So what is happening to people in their 20s? What's happening to us? What's happening to us in our brains? What's happening to us in culture? What are we being told? How are we feeling? Like, let's have a little look at some studies and data and just chat about this grand age that everyone seems to have an opinion on. No matter who you are, where you're from, what your cultural background is, I think your 20s universally feel like a very stressful time. So apart from the fact that our brains are literally not fully developed until we're 25, 26. Like our prefrontal lobe is literally, it's like a child's adolescence development. We're still not fully developed. Like it makes sense that, you know, in our early 20s, we're still hectic, we're still chaotic because our brains are not actually adult brains yet. So apart from that to contend with, these psychological, biological factors, there are so many cultural reasons, so many societal pressures as to why the data suggests that being in our 20s is a tough time. According to a very recent report by the Resolution Foundation, this was literally done 2024, guys, so this shows the current state. Young people now have the poorest mental health of any age group, which is actually a reversal from 2 decades ago when they had the lowest incidence of common mental disorders. So if you're ever having your parents or the boomer generation being like, oh, you know, young people these days are just snowflakes saying that they're struggling, but, you know, things were just as hard, if not harder, in my day. There are literal reports now to show that we are struggling more with our mental health than previous generations. And obviously you could argue that maybe we're more open about mental health than previous generations. Maybe they would have been less honest about mental health. But I think there are definitely reports to suggest that we are struggling more. And what are some of the potential reasons for that? Hot take. This might not even be a hot take. Maybe it's actually really obvious. But social media, this wonderful thing we're existing on right now, and that obviously does have so many benefits for creativity and having more representation of different life avenues, and, you know, there's so many wonderful things about the age of connection and storytelling. But it is also the age of increased comparison. All of a sudden, you can go on your phone and you can be exposed to a world of different lives that you could be living. Whether it's, you know, influencers. I can't really say anything there because you're literally watching this and I guess that's me. But, you know, whether it's like influencers, public figures, or even just your friends or old connections, you are constantly witnessing hundreds of thousands of different ways of living life in your 20s. And the human brain was not meant to deal with being exposed to that many types of ways of doing life. And you can imagine when you're just scrolling through your stories, you're witnessing someone having their girl boss era, climbing the corporate ladder, managing a team of 20 people and being a millionaire at age 21. And then you scroll and like, oh my gosh, your other friend's just gotten married and is having kids and living this beautiful, idyllic life in the countryside. And, you know, every single scroll, you're exposed to a different way of doing life. But our brain makes us feel like we can do all of those all the time. And there's this sense of inadequacy with however we're spending our time. This like grass is always greener mindset. And I think that's just something that generations before us didn't have to deal with in the same way. Like no matter what they chose, even if maybe they weren't 100% content with what they were doing, they didn't have to be reckoned with every other way that they could possibly be spending their life every single day looking at their friends. So there's just this new stress of comparison, and I definitely feel it. Like I know the feeling of looking at the cottagecore life and the like corporate life and the like chill life, and just like you're scrolling, there's just so many options all the time, and it can feel very overwhelming. And for us being in our 20s, we're the generation for whom social media feels very second nature to us. I got a phone at the age of 11 coming into secondary school. I was, you know, one of the lucky people who got to have a childhood without a phone and social media. But then I was kind of raised into adulthood with this way of sharing my life, of having to put a narrative on my life, of being aware of strangers and friends' perceptions of my narrative all the time. And so we're the generation who have been taught to perform subconsciously. And when we're exposed to the comparison culture, it puts pressure on us to do something worthy of being compared to. And that is stressful. It is stressful because even when you're struggling, you feel a pressure to perform as though everything's fine and to show that you're really happy and that you're content with the life path that you've chosen. And so it just makes sense that there's this sense of lostness, because we're trying to prove to others that our life is good, but maybe we're actually feeling a little bit lost and uncertain behind the scenes. But you know what? I have some simultaneously depressing and optimistic news for you. So some really recent studies were done this year, actually. We're bringing you the recent data. And it was done by Dr. Meg Jay, who I'm going to talk a bit more about later. Incredible, famous psychologist, wrote an incredible book called The Defining Decade, which I will be digging into later. But her research shows that mental health in your life follows a J-shaped curve. So as you're going through childhood, it's kind of like, I don't know, life is good, right? You're plateauing a bit, like life is great. But as you enter your early adulthood, your happiness just plunges, mental health plunges. And then thankfully, as we advance into proper adulthood, into our 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s and beyond, it's like a sharp, wonderful increase, because I'm assuming like our brains are just more fully developed, you have a better sense of self, you've done a lot of the difficult exploration, and just, you have more of a sense of who you are. I have some statistics, and I don't know, like it's almost like laughable how bad this is. Like, I'm so glad that we have research to prove that the way we feel is legitimate, like it's backed up by these studies. About 50% of 20-somethings report problems with anxiety. About 40% complain of feeling depressed, and about 30% think about ending their lives, and about 20% struggle with substance use. And just reading that, like I just get it, Like, I think that I am walking through my 20s with a lot of privilege, and I already feel very overwhelmed by just, I don't know, the overwhelmingness, the chaoticness of this era of life. And I have friends who are in very different circumstances to me as they walk through their 20s, and it makes sense why people feel so lost. And I think there's almost this desire to like control our lives in our 20s, but there's so much that is outside of our control. Like, I don't know, just simple things like rent control that the government does, or like how hard it can be to buy a house in the current housing market, or the way that the economy is going. Like, there's all these factors beside us that do influence our lives. And I'm glad that these studies exist to validate our mental health in this difficult phase of life. But you know what the good news is about the J curve is that even though we're in this plunge point, we're in the plunge point of uncertainty, having to figure out so much, all these like pressures of the world, like feel like they're like tightening on us like a noose. It's a lot. Is that the J curve has a dramatic jump as you get older. And I think there's a lot of reasons for this. I think, you just have a better sense of who you are. You feel more in control of your life as you go on. Maybe you have a partner, or you have support systems around you that make life feel lighter. Your brain is fully developed. Like, there's a lot of reasons why life gets better. But I think really acknowledging that it's okay to feel overwhelmed now is just important, and to know that things statistically will get better. So even if you're struggling now, just have this trust Dr. Meg Jay and her research that things will get better, and just keep going, keep trying to be optimistic, and find little reasons every day to find the joy, find the ways to keep going. And see you when we're all 40 and happy, I guess. We also have this other interesting element, which is that society really values and glorifies early success in life. There is this constant sense of a timeline of our lives, right? Like, what have you achieved by age 21? What have you achieved by age 25? It's like Forbes 30 under 30. You're scrolling through LinkedIn and it feels like everyone uses the age that they are as like this this engaging, catchy hook to celebrate themselves. Like, I achieved all of this by age 21. Like, I achieved this right when I came out of the womb, you know? It's like people love to say that they've achieved things like really early in life, and it is worth celebrating, like genuinely like incredible when people make their dreams happen at a young age. And yeah, I think we should be supporting everyone in seizing what they want in life. But I think it does create this unnecessary pressure of trying to be something, trying to make something of yourself so young in life. And it's important to remember that life is long. There's a whole gorgeous stretch of time ahead of you. Like, you can become a famous YouTuber when you're 80, you know, like you don't have to do it now. And I think life really comes in chapters, and whatever you do in your 20s doesn't have to be your most like defining success-driven state. And I think it would be remiss to talk about our 20s without talking about class, without talking about the myth of meritocracy. Meritocracy is the idea that the harder you work, the more successful you'll be. And we're kind of raised into that idea, especially in an individualistic society, in a capitalistic society. We're told, you know, work hard, whether it be at school, whether it be in your job, and you will be rewarded. And what that actually misses is that we don't all start at the same place. We don't all have the same opportunities, and all of us have different barriers and obstacles to achieving our dreams, or even having representation of what success can look like for us. And this is sometimes known as the class ceiling, where based on your class, for example, you come from a working class background, there's like almost this invisible ceiling lower down where it's so hard to break out of it. And someone who came from a more affluent background doesn't mean they don't even have a ceiling. Like, the ceiling is the sky, because they have the resources, the opportunity, the money, the imagination to make bigger things happen for themselves. And I think even, you know, just thinking of growing up in a small town or a small village where no one you know has ever left. Everyone in your secondary school intends to stay in that village. You know, everyone, like your parents were raised there, your grandparents were raised there. Suddenly it becomes the bravest, scariest thing in the world to consider leaving that place, in a way that it wouldn't seem half as scary for someone who has grown up traveling, or has grown up in a city, or their parents are from multiple places. And I think remembering that context is so important when we look at our dreams and our ideas of success, because we all start in different places. And I think a song which really represents this, and is someone I'm just obsessed with, is Chappell Roan. I don't know if you know her. She is my obsession of the year. I adore that woman. I think she's just, her lyrics are so amazing. Her music's just great. You can put it on, you can bop. But there's also so much depth and richness to her music. And she has a song called Pink Pony Club. And it's talking about how she's from this small little town in rural Missouri where she was never expected to become a pop star, you know, like even being involved in the arts or becoming a singer was just something very taboo. And she ended up moving to California to start her career. And that song is all about how her parents don't get it. No one in her life gets it. They all think it's very taboo what she's done. And it's almost her having to mourn her parents' dream identity for her, this dream identity where she would continue living in that place, being the like quiet small town girl that they expected her to be, and her having to struggle so much to break out of that and achieve her dreams. Definitely recommend listening to that song if you want to cry and dance at the same time. When other generations say things like, the 20s, they're your time of least responsibilities, like just enjoy your life, I think it's very reductionist, because maybe you're in your 20s and you're a young carer, caring for your parents or siblings, or you already have children, right? Like maybe you're a single parent, or like I went to an international university with students from 45 plus countries from very financially diverse backgrounds. And for a lot of my friends, they have this extreme stress and pressure to pay off their loans, but in order to do that, they have to live in a country where the currency allows them to pay it off. So, for example, one of my best friends from Vietnam took out a big loan to be able to study in the US, doesn't have financial backing from her parents, and had this immense pressure to find a job in the United States and to keep that job in order to pay off her loans, because if she goes back to Vietnam, like the currency just wouldn't let her pay that off. And so there's all these invisible weights, all these big burdens that we're carrying. And God, it's just important to remember that we all have those different contexts in our 20s, and to just to see your success in the context of these invisible barriers weighing us down. But the crazy thing is, when we're on social media, when we're witnessing the lives of people in their 20s who are successful, we normally only see the end product. We see the success, but we very rarely see the makings of that success. We very rarely see the hidden struggles, the long nights staying up studying while also trying to balance 3 part-time jobs to be able to just pay your rent, And I think it's important not to just compare ourselves to the end product of what we want to be, but to also realize that there are all these invisible struggles along the way that other people have had to go through, and so that we also have to go through in order to try and make our dreams a reality. But the thing is, when we all have very different starting points, then the same amount of hard work yields very different results. Coming back to that class ceiling, it is, even if 2 people are working the same amount of hours of effort, one person who is bogged down by their class ceiling is going to have to struggle that bit harder just to try and have anywhere close to the same life of someone who doesn't have that class ceiling. There was an interview done with James McAvoy in 2016, and he talks about the class ceiling and how many people's dreams get sacrificed because of his class ceiling, and how we don't see those dreams because they were never able to be actualized. And he goes on to talk about how the education system is unfortunately putting less and less emphasis on the arts. The government is cutting funding for the arts. And I went to a state school. If you've been to a state school, you know that you are much more at the whim of the choices that the government makes. And if the government isn't valuing the arts, then the likelihood is your school just cannot afford to value it in the way that maybe they would like to. And he talks about how art is one of the ways that you can learn to dream bigger than your current circumstances. Like when you act, when you do drama, you're embodying different roles, you're embodying different people and different lives, and that lets you see beyond your own life. If you're encouraged to read, to engage with a lot of literature, you're literally living different worlds, and that is what allows you to dream and gives you this representation that maybe you don't have in your day-to-day life. It's just sad that there are these other factors, like governmental factors, educational factors, that can influence why it's harder to dream bigger as someone coming into their 20s now, in ways that maybe you didn't even realize were affecting you. Maybe if you're someone who's not very artistic, who didn't have artistic opportunities growing up, you didn't even realize that you were missing out on the opportunity to dream bigger.
Really, I don't think it matters if all the actors are posh guys. Doesn't matter. But what it does mean, if all the actors are posh actors, is that it's a symptom of something wrong in our educational system, which is basically that the government isn't allowing state pupils that go to normal school, not the expensive schools, to have access to art and educational art. And I don't really care if you become an actor, but I do think it's important to educate children artistically, because it's the one thing that I think increases the chance of social mobility and stops you from just sticking where you are. And I truly believe that if you want your kids to have a better life than you've got, a really good way to do it is to expose them to art, because it makes them see beyond their limitations and see new horizons, even if they can't physically leave their little town where they were born. And I don't know, I think it's a system of control to keep people where they are, to cut funding of the arts in education specifically.
Like, even though I've experienced a very privileged life in general, but I was the first in my family to go to university. And even though my parents have always been very supportive, they're like, go on, Jade, like, do what you want to do, achieve your dreams. I had no idea what uni was like, and I didn't really have them to ask for advice or help or what their thoughts were like on uni. Like, I didn't know how uni worked. Like, I think I was 16 when I realized that you live in like student accommodation. Like I had no idea what to expect. And I think it's just harder when you aren't supported by people in your close life to achieve those dreams, because you don't even realize that you don't have the representation that you might need. If you are looking for a book, the best book that you could possibly read in your 20s, I would recommend this one called The Defining Decade by Meg Jay. Meg Jay, I've mentioned her earlier in this episode. She's the icon of today's episode, and she's a psychologist who has spent her life working mainly with people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. And she realised that a lot of the main issues people face later in life can be tracked back to how they spent their 20s. And so she wrote this book illuminating a lot of the lessons that she wishes people in their 20s could hear, could learn about to make the rest of their lives better. Interestingly, one of the biggest points that I learned from this book is to be more intentional in your 20s, and in particular, to be more intentional with your love life. In fact, being just as intentional with your love life as you are with your career or your academics or your tangible success goals. And I think this really resonated with me in particular because I am a workaholic. I've always been a workaholic. Like at school, I was Hermione Granger. I had no interest in love life, like whatsoever. Like I just didn't care. I was married to my impossible list, which is a bucket list I made when I was about 16, listing all the dramatic endeavors that I would love to achieve in my life, like starting a YouTube channel, writing a book, and traveling. And yeah, I think I just always assumed that romantic love just happens. You know, like we grow up watching the fairy tales, we watch the Disney princesses, and you think that the love of your life will just pop up one day when you're not expecting it, and that you will miraculously be excellent at love, and that love is not a skill that you need to learn. And I really appreciated Meg Jay's frankness in this book. She just helped me realize that love is something you need to work on. Love is a skill. Being a good partner is a skill, and you have to learn how to communicate well. You have to learn what your unhealed patterns are that might show up from your parents' relationship or the way that intimacy was handled in your household. For example, I realized through dating that I'm a very avoidant person. Literally, how was I meant to know that until I started, trying to see people? And yeah, it was so much to unpack that I realized, like, whenever I get into emotional situations with people, I would rather run than sit in the difficulty and talk it through. And that is a skill that I've had to learn. That is something I've had to become more self-aware about. So you should start learning those things as early as possible. And especially if you're looking for a long-term partner, you're interested in things like marriage later in life, then the earlier you start to think about your love life, the earlier you're learning those lessons, so that hopefully you're in an amazing place when you meet the right person to have a long-lasting, mature and healthy, loving marriage. It might sound kind of funny, but that book inspired me to make a Bumble account and to go on dates. And you know what? Love life is just a choice. Like, it's something you have to choose to invest your energy and time into, and to do the scary thing of putting yourself out there and being open-minded towards people. So I think when we're thinking about our 20s and how to optimize them, thinking about your love life as a really worthy area to spend your time and energy on is important, and reminds us that there's so much more to our 20s than just our careers or the hustle of, earning a lot of money and working out where we want to be. I always thought that when I graduated, I would suddenly have everything figured out. That by the age of graduating, I would know my dream career, I would have that job offer, I would be in that dream career, and my love life would just take off, and I'd have a dream apartment and be surrounded by incredible people, and just everything would sort itself out. And instead, I graduated and felt the worst burnout possible. Like, after 4 years of studying, of trying to like manage my YouTube channel alongside it, and just having so much to juggle in my university years, I came out of uni feeling incredibly lost, incredibly burnt out, incredibly uncertain, existential. And I actually just realized I didn't even have the capacity to think of getting another job outside of YouTube. Like, I actually did not have the energetic capacity. And I almost had to hurt my ego by deciding to just go home and do nothing and sit in my uncertainty for a few months. I had to release this expectation of having it all figured out straight away. And I can vividly remember after graduating, coming back and sitting in my childhood bedroom and just staring at myself in the mirror and realizing how different I looked from who I was before I started university. Like, the last time that I lived in this childhood bedroom, and thinking about how much had changed, how I was so used to having independence and being this like hustling girl boss person, and now all of a sudden here I am back here in my childhood home, and I have no idea what's going on, and I forced to look back at my childhood version of myself again. It was so much like internal stuff coming up. And when I was sitting in my childhood bedroom, I almost just felt this sense of wanting to prove to everyone that the choices I had made were the right ones. I want to prove to my parents that going to this crazy university would land me an impressive career. I wanted to prove to my YouTube audience that taking a risk on a newer university would lead me to some successful outcome. And instead, being there feeling really lost and uncertain just felt like, I don't know, like a slap in the face. Like, I wasn't proving anything. Like, I was doing the opposite. I felt like, I don't even know, like, it's so silly saying that I felt like a failure, because I loved my university experience, and I think it was successful in so many ways. But I think whenever you don't know what you're doing next, it's very hard not to feel like a failure. Like, when I'm a control freak, I love having like my next 5 years or 10 years planned, and so sitting there like at home having no idea what was next was just terrifying. My situation is a bit different as well, because I have a YouTube channel. I was already earning an income. Like, it's different pressures to someone who graduates and suddenly needs to earn money and like doesn't have that source of income. But the downside is that I felt like I had the eyes of the world watching me in this period of uncertainty. Like, I had all these people waiting to see what I would do next. And that was just, it was quite a terrifying thought. And I felt less inspired to create, didn't know who I wanted to be online, didn't know what I had to say. So it felt like I went from, I don't know, like this hustling life at university where like I was so creative, I loved creating, my YouTube channel, I have so much to say, to everything being gone. All the friends at uni, all my essays, all the work from university, but also my creative passion with YouTube just kind of like welling up and drying up, and me being like, what do I do now? Yeah. But you know what? In retrospect, those 4 months that I spent at home were some of the most needed and formative 4 months of my entire life. And I could not have told you that at the time, but I can only say that with the gift of retrospect. Because not only did I properly overcome burnout and just actually rest and get 8 hours of sleep a night, but I also deepened my relationship with my parents in a brand new way. I kind of changed this like hierarchical relationship that you have of like child and parent, and I started to see them of like adult to adult. I kind of started to see them as holistic humans and not just idolizing them, but really like understanding their faults and being fine with those faults, and maybe thinking about how those faults have affected me growing up, and really reflecting on our relationships and how I want to move forward in my relationship with my parents in adulthood. I became more comfortable being alone. Like, guys, at university for 4 years, I always had at least one roommate living in a bedroom with me. Sometimes 2, sometimes 3 roommates in my bedroom. Can you imagine that? Like, I had to learn how to be alone while constantly with people. And, you know, they ended up feeling like family. It was a blessing in disguise, but I was so not used to just the total silence of being in my own head. And those 4 months were so formative for just relearning how to be okay with myself. And in taking that time to really just reflect on my life and what I wanted, I kind of allowed myself to step away from peer pressure, to not compare myself to what my friends were doing. You know, like, I have friends doing all sorts of things. My best friend, she started an edtech startup, which is amazing. I have another friend who's working in investment banking, and all my friends are in New York and they're doing dramatic, incredible things. And I think when I was graduating and just deciding to like move home and nurture my burnout, I was so aware of what my peers were doing. But as those months went on, my anxiety just softened, and I became at peace with my decisions and how they really were serving me in different ways. So an idea that has given me peace, which I think I learned in those 4 months at home, is that your life comes in chapters. Your 20s comes in chapters, and every mini chapter has a different priority, and that's fine. You don't need to be going 100% on every single area of your life all the time. Like, you can have a chapter where you prioritize rest. You can have a chapter where you prioritize your career. You can have a chapter where you prioritize making money to save up for your dream house. You have the chapter focused on love. And I think compartmentalizing your priorities and like kind of like taking them a little chunk at a time means that eventually your 20s will add up to you having worked on all of those areas and like just trusting that it will happen. Like, your 20s, that's an entire decade. That's a whole decade of time. That's a lot of time. You don't need to be striving for success in all areas of life all the time. And something I love to do is doing mini life check-ins. So I'll ask myself, how do I feel about my career right now? How do I feel about my love life, my friendship life, my financial goals? You know, like, how do I feel at each of these areas? And just asking, which is my priority right now? And being fine with that. Being fine that maybe I'm not focusing on all of them, but I'm choosing that one right now. And as I grow, as I shift and change, those priorities will also grow and shift and change. And that's beautiful. That's growing up. So the big conclusion. Here is how I am living my 20s. I am living my 20s embracing uncertainty. I'm embracing that I don't fully know who I'm going to be in 5 years, 10 years' time. I don't fully know what I want. I don't fully know who my long-term partner is going to be, where I'm going to live, what my career is going to end up being. And I am embracing that and allowing myself to just take in the lessons of the present, a day at a time. But I am also doing it with a little sprinkle of rational long-term thinking. So I'm in the present, I'm living my life, I'm focusing on my little priorities as they come at a time, but I'm using my knowledge from books like The Defining Decade, my knowledge of all these different studies about our 20s and how best to spend them, to make sure that I'm also just generally aware of things that I should be intentional about, right? Like, maybe my priority is work and career, but I'm going to sprinkle in a little bit of that long-term thinking by also going on dates and thinking about my love life. I'm living my 20s firmly rooted in the here and now, making decisions that feel good in the present, but I also have one hand outstretched to my future self, making sure that she isn't put in a really difficult position. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm kind of waiting for the age of 25, which is next year, when I'll magically wake up and have a fully developed prefrontal lobe and all my problems will be solved. So see you on March 17th next year, when I am a fully formed, incredible, happy, perfect human. And so to bring it back to casual magic, in all this stress and all this hecticness of working out who we are at this age, for me, the habit of casual magic it just makes so much sense. It just makes life feel so much more meaningful. Rather than just chasing the big successes and goals, we can choose to find the beauty now, in the mundane things of every day, in the comical trials and tribulations of our lives. So my casual magic of the week is I'm just so grateful for my long distance friends. Like, I went to university with a lot of people from all around the world, and so now my friends are unfortunately scattered around the world. But I feel so grateful for the effort that my friends have put into keeping our friendships alive. And I called 3 of my friends this week, and it's just so lovely being able to catch up with them and feel like they're still part of my reality. So it just feels casually magic. Also, I've got to love the internet, got to love technology, right? The fact that I can stay in touch with these people I love across the world. And now, just like every week, we're going to hear from one of you. So here is one of your casual magics this week.
Hi Jade, I'm Martina and I'm from Italy. I would like to talk about my casual magic moment that happened a week ago. I met a friend at university and she told me that day there was the Europe Researchers Night in the city center, so I agreed to come with her. I wasn't expecting anything, but once I randomly stepped in the city center, I saw a lot of stalls with many researchers, scientists who devote their lives to medicine, coding, food education. It was a wonder to look at all their effort. And as this girl is a member of the university radio, I even did my first interview to one of these researchers. It was so exciting and it made me feel really proud.
Okay, and at this time every week, I ask you to reflect on how your week has been and set an intention, a guiding thought, and a goal for the future week to come. Feel free to grab a journal, grab your notes app, or just think about it in your head if it's easier. Firstly, ask yourself, what is something you're proud of this week? What went well? What is a little win that you can write down and celebrate? And what is something that maybe didn't go well this week? What is something that challenged you, or an obstacle or a difficulty? Just acknowledge it. And based on these 2 reflections, what is your intention for next week? This can be a word, a phrase, a theme, just something to carry into how you conduct your next week. When I reflect on this week, we've been very lucky to have a very warm week in London. Does not happen very often, and I've just been really enjoying my life. I've still been doing my everyday routines, but when the sun is shining, I think everything just has this new joy and abundance, and I really want to carry that into next week as well. So my intention is joy, to let myself feel joy. Oh, guys, thank you so much. If you made it to this point in the episode, we've been on a journey. We've been on a hectic little journey discussing all the stresses of our 20s. And I don't know, I'm just so grateful that you're here. Thank you for being in this little corner of the internet. Thank you for sharing your energy and space and time with me. If no one has told you, you are enough. You're enough exactly as you are, even if you feel stressed, even if you haven't achieved all your dreams yet, even if things aren't going your way, you are enough in this moment exactly as you are. Today we covered all sorts of things. We looked at some of the psychological, social, cultural factors why our 20s are particularly stressful. We validated this stress with research to show that we're not just making it up, it is genuinely a difficult time to be alive. But hopefully you also felt that we looked at some ways to approach this uncertainty by embracing it, splitting our life into just little seasons and little chapters and taking away that big existential stress. And also, yes, being rational, thinking about our long-term future, but also just reminding ourselves to ground in the present and find the casual magic in what is right in front of us now. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned and stay magical.